Right now, you may be questioning the very foundation of connection itself. You may be wondering why ordinary relationships suddenly feel hollow, why traditional love no longer satisfies your spirit, or why you sense a deeper truth beneath the surface of human interaction. Something inside you knows there is a type of meeting that is purer, quieter, and infinitely more profound than the dramatic passion you see in romance stories or the glossy ideals often described in spiritual circles. You are searching for a connection that does not arise from need or emptiness, but from wholeness, and you may be wondering if such a rare encounter is even real, or if it is something your soul is imagining. In today's video, we are going to reveal the truth behind one of the most extraordinary experiences a human soul can have, the meeting between two beings who have genuinely awakened to their true nature. We will guide you into this subtle, sacred space where connection is not born from longing but from fullness, where two souls recognize each other, not as missing pieces, but as whole universes. You will learn why most relationships arise from mutual incompleteness, how awakened connection is fundamentally different, and what happens energetically when two fully conscious beings cross paths. This is not fantasy, not theory, not mythology. It is a quiet miracle that reshapes everything. By the end of this video, you will never look at love, connection, or spiritual partnership in the same way again. You will understand why awakened souls meet differently, love differently, and transform differently. You will see that true spiritual union is not built on filling a void, but on meeting as equals, creators, and mirrors of divine fullness. And this understanding will challenge you deeply. It will invite you to rise into a higher standard of love, to release outdated patterns, and to prepare your energy for encounters that operate on an entirely different frequency. This video will show you the kind of connection your soul has been longing for but didn't yet have the language to name. Section 1. The illusion of need and the roots of human love. Most human relationships begin long before two people ever meet. They are born in the quiet, unspoken spaces inside us, the places where we feel incomplete, unseen, or somehow not enough. When a person senses a missing piece within themselves, the natural instinct is to look outward for someone who can soothe that ache. And when another person carries a similar emptiness, a bond forms not through wholeness, but through shared longing. We often call this experience falling in love, yet for many, it is more honestly described as falling into need. This kind of connection is like two halves desperately trying to become whole. It is two empty cups leaning toward one another, hoping that by touching, they will somehow fill. It is two drowning souls clinging together, not because they can swim on their own, but because they fear sinking alone. And while these relationships can be functional, comforting, and even deeply affectionate, they are woven from a misunderstanding that has shaped human love for centuries. The belief that happiness lives somewhere outside of you. When love is built on need, the other person becomes a remedy, a bandage placed over an internal wound. Their presence feels like oxygen, their absence like suffocation. We chase validation because we fear our own emptiness. We seek completion in another because we have not yet discovered our own fullness. And so the relationship becomes a constant negotiation between longing and fear, closeness and dependency. Yet the truth, the spiritual truth, is simple and liberating. No partner, no soulmate, no twin flame can complete the parts of you that you refuse to meet within yourself. When love comes from emptiness, it binds. When love comes from wholeness, it frees. And until we recognize this illusion of need, we unconsciously recreate the same patterns, searching for a love that can only be born from within. Before we move into the next section, take a moment to reflect on what this means for your own journey. Have you ever mistaken need for love, or looked to someone else to fill a space you hadn't yet explored within yourself? Your insights matter, not only for your growth, but for everyone walking this path with you. If this message is awakening something inside you, let me know in the comments. Share your experience, your story, or simply type, "I choose wholeness," to anchor this truth into your field. And if you're finding value in this video, remember to like it so more awakened souls can find their way here. Let's continue. Section 2. Wholeness and the freedom of non-need. When two truly awakened souls encounter one another, something entirely different unfolds, something that stands in complete contrast to the relationships shaped by longing, fear, or inner fragmentation. The first and most liberating truth to understand is this: awakened souls do not meet because they need each other. Their connection does not rise from emptiness or longing, but from the profound internal realization that the wholeness they once sought outside was always their own. These beings have already walked through the fires of self-discovery, dissolved illusions of lack, and reclaimed the fullness of their inner universe. Because they stand in their own completeness, they do not approach each other as two halves desperately searching for the missing piece. Instead, they meet as two whole universes, each expansive, luminous, and sovereign, recognizing in the other a reflection of the same infinite field of consciousness. It is a moment of mutual remembrance, where both souls sense the familiar echo of the divine within the other, not as something to be possessed, but as something to be honored. In this kind of meeting, the energy is entirely different from conventional love dynamics. There is no grasping, no subtle fear of loss, no silent hope that the other will repair an inner void. Instead, the connection is rooted in freedom. It is born from a place where both individuals choose each other, not out of desperation or emotional hunger, but out of resonance, alignment, and deep inner clarity. This is what makes awakened love so powerful and so rare. It is a relationship based on choice rather than need, on celebration rather than survival, and on presence rather than possession. When two whole beings come together, their union does not drain their energy, it expands it. Their connection becomes a space of amplification rather than dependency, a field where growth feels natural and authenticity feels effortless. And because nothing is demanded or extracted, both souls feel safe to show up fully. They can breathe, they can open, they can reveal themselves without fear of disappointing or being disappointed. They are not trying to complete each other, they are simply meeting in the truth that they are already complete. The beauty of this connection is not in its intensity, but in its purity, its spaciousness, and its profound freedom. When awakened souls meet, love stops being a remedy for emptiness and becomes a celebration of wholeness. It becomes an expression of truth rather than a grasp for comfort. This is love without fear, without clutching, without expectation, a love that arises not from what is missing, but from what is already overflowing. Section 3. Enjoyment without extraction and the purity of appreciation. The connection between awakened souls carries a quality so rare and so gentle that it almost feels like a different language of love. It resembles the experience of eating, when you are already satisfied, when your body is nourished and your hunger has already been met. In that state of fullness, you don't devour your food out of desperation or need. You taste, you savor, you notice every texture, every nuance, every subtle layer of flavor because you are no longer trying to fill an emptiness. You are simply enjoying what is already naturally pleasurable. This is precisely how awakened souls experience each other. They do not come together seeking validation, rescue, or emotional extraction. They do not look to the other to soothe inner wounds because those wounds have already been tended to. Their meeting is not an attempt to escape loneliness, nor a strategy to fill psychological or spiritual gaps. Instead, they meet in the quiet fullness of their own being. And from that fullness, they discover the beauty of simply appreciating one another. In awakened connection, there is no frantic energy, no subtle bargaining, no emotional hunger driving the relationship forward. Each soul is already internally complete, so the purpose of the connection becomes enjoyment rather than consumption, presence rather than possession, appreciation rather than acquisition. They taste each moment the way a satisfied person tastes food, with awareness, sensitivity, reverence, and sincere delight. Because neither is trying to extract anything from the other, the space between them remains light, clean, and unburdened. There is no fear of being drained, no worry about losing oneself, and no underlying tension about what the other must provide. What arises instead is a spacious intimacy, a gentle, joyful closeness that feels like sitting with another universe and marveling at its uniqueness without needing to control or own it. Awakened souls recognize each other not as sources of completion, but as living expressions of the same vast awareness, the same infinite field that breathes through all things. This recognition creates a purity of connection that cannot be replicated through ordinary attraction or emotional need. It is a union rooted in appreciation rather than appetite, in wonder rather than want. And because nothing is being demanded, everything can be received. The relationship becomes an ever-expanding field of curiosity, presence, and mutual revelation. They savor each other the way consciousness savors its own reflection, gently, joyfully, and without ever needing to cling. Imagine two awakened souls sitting together on a quiet balcony at dusk. There is no pressure to impress, no need to perform, no unspoken fear that one must deliver something to keep the other close. They are simply sharing the same sunset. One gently points out how the light turns the clouds into rose gold, and the other smiles, not because they need the moment to prove anything, but because beauty becomes more beautiful when witnessed together. There is no hunger in their exchange, no grasping for reassurance, no invisible contract of, "give me more." Instead, the connection feels like breathing, natural, effortless, spacious. Even in silence, they feel understood. Even without touch, they feel connected. And if one were to leave tomorrow, neither would feel abandoned, because the experience was never about taking, it was about appreciating. This is the purity of awakened intimacy, the ability to sit with another being, fully nourished within yourself, and still revel in the miracle of their presence without ever needing to own it. Section 4. Freedom, Trust, and the Dissolution of Drama. When a relationship is born from true awakening, an entirely different kind of freedom becomes possible. A freedom so rare, so unburdened, that most people will never experience it in their lifetime. This freedom arises because neither person clings to the other for emotional survival. There is no grasping, no gripping, no silent expectations hiding beneath the surface. Both individuals already stand in their own wholeness, so their connection becomes fluid, alive, spacious, and profoundly open. It breathes instead of suffocates. It expands instead of contracts. In this sacred field, the fear of loss evaporates. There is no internal storyline whispering, "What if they leave? What if they choose someone else? What if I am not enough?" Those narratives collapse because both souls already know they cannot lose themselves and therefore cannot be abandoned. There is nothing to control, nothing to manipulate, nothing to mold. When you no longer need someone to fulfill a wound, you stop trying to shape them into an ideal that protects your fear. The relationship stops being a negotiation and becomes a meeting of equals. Melodrama loses its power in this space. The emotional storms that once defined past connections, the panic, the push-pull, the proving, the chase dissolve because there is no energetic soil left for them to root in. Manipulation cannot survive in a field of truth. Power struggles fall away because neither soul is competing for validation or dominance. Even jealousy, if it flickers for a moment, is seen without distortion and released with clarity, not weaponized to create fear or force reassurance. It becomes a passing cloud instead of a storm. Conflict also transforms in awakened connection. Instead of threatening the bond, conflict becomes a doorway to greater understanding. Because both souls are anchored in wholeness, they do not fear rupture. They do not fear losing the other or losing themselves. Tension does not send them into panic. It invites them into deeper presence. They listen instead of defend, respond instead of react, and repair instead of retreat. The relationship becomes a container where truth can be spoken without punishment and vulnerability can be offered without fear. This is why awakened partnership carries a quiet, unshakable safety. It is not the safety built from promises, attachment, or dependency. It is the safety of two people standing so firmly in themselves that they can finally meet without distortion. When you no longer fear loss, you no longer create drama. When you no longer grasp for control, you no longer collapse into insecurity. And when you are no longer driven by unconscious need, love becomes what it was always meant to be: a choice, a celebration, a presence, and a freedom that expands everyone it touches. Section 5. Sacred Transparency and the Dance of True Communication. When two awakened souls meet, something rare and unmistakable happens almost instantly. There is a quiet but powerful recognition, a sense of "I see you" and "you see me" that cuts through layers of conditioning with effortless precision. In this presence, masks fall away on their own. Pretenses dissolve because they are no longer necessary. The personas each has learned to wear in the world, the roles, the defenses, the polished versions of self gently melt, revealing two beings who feel safe enough to be profoundly real. This is transparency, not as a forced confession, but as a natural state of being. Communication shifts into an entirely different frequency. It no longer resembles debate, performance, or intellectual sparring. Instead, it becomes exploration, a shared journey into truth without the need to win, convince, or defend. They can disagree without division because neither soul uses their opinions as identity. Ideas are allowed to move freely without becoming weapons. Perspectives can change, expand, or remain open, and none of it threatens the connection. Listening also transforms in awakened relationship. They do not listen in order to respond, to correct, or to position themselves. They listen to receive, to understand the world through the other's eyes, to witness the subtle movements of their partner's inner landscape. Silence becomes a living presence rather than an absence. Long, quiet moments feel full, sacred, and nourishing a kind of communion beyond words. In this silence, their energies speak more clearly than language ever could. They allow each other to remain mysterious, unpredictable, alive. There is no desire to categorize or control, no urge to flatten the other into something familiar or manageable. They understand that mystery is not a threat, but an essential ingredient of love. It keeps the connection vibrant, breathing, and ever-evolving. They welcome the unknown inside each other because they trust the depth from which it arises. Their bond becomes a dance rather than a negotiation. A dance where perspectives meet like waves, sometimes aligning, sometimes diverging, always flowing. There is no clash of egos because ego is no longer in charge. Instead, communication becomes a dynamic play of insight, curiosity, openness, and presence. Nothing is forced. Nothing is coerced. Everything is allowed to unfold naturally, guided by the coherence of both souls. This is the sacred transparency of awakened partnership, a space where honesty is effortless, communication is alive, and two beings move together with depth, grace, and freedom. Section 6. Physical presence, sacred ease, and the rhythm of closeness and distance. When physical intimacy unfolds between awakened beings, it carries a completely different energy from the urgency, insecurity, and unconscious hunger that define most human connections. Instead of being an escape from inner emptiness, intimacy becomes a celebration, a playful, present, conscious exploration of what it feels like for two embodied universes to meet. Their touch is not used to fill a void, but to express the wholeness that already exists within both. Every moment of closeness becomes a doorway into deeper awareness, a way of experiencing consciousness through form. Because neither person is driven by need, performance, or pressure, the connection feels grounded, natural, and fully alive. There is no pretending, no rehearsed gestures, no silent fear whispering beneath the surface. Their bodies communicate with the same honesty their souls do. They can be fully close without clinging, and equally distant without panic. The absence of fear makes space for true freedom. They understand that real intimacy is not measured by constant proximity, but by the authenticity that flows, whether they are together or apart. Awakened partners move with the sacred rhythm of connection, the way breath moves in and out naturally, effortlessly, without tension. Togetherness does not suffocate, and separation does not wound. They know that space is not abandonment, and closeness is not possession. Each moment becomes a conscious choice rather than a reflex of insecurity. Their relationship breathes like a living being, expanding and contracting in perfect alignment with their inner truth. When conflict appears, as it inevitably does in all human bonds, it is not treated as a battlefield or a competition. There is no desire to win, no impulse to dominate, and no need to protect pride at the cost of connection. Instead, they move toward resolution with clarity and humility. Apologies are offered without resistance because ego is not running the show. Forgiveness flows without calculation because neither is keeping score. Giving becomes effortless because generosity arises naturally from fullness, not from a desperate attempt to secure love or avoid loss. This is the ease that awakened love makes possible, the quiet, steady grace of two people who no longer relate from fear, but from truth. A relationship that honors closeness and distance, passion and stillness, connection and space, all as sacred movements of the same divine breath. If you've made it this far into the journey, It means something within you recognizes this truth, not just as an idea, but as a lived possibility, already awakening inside your own path. Take a moment to breathe and reflect on how these patterns show up in your relationships, your body, and your inner world. What parts of this section spoke directly to your heart? I invite you to share your story, your insight, or your experience in the comments below. And if you prefer something simple yet powerful, just type, "I welcome awakened love into my life," as an affirmation to anchor this frequency into your field. Your engagement not only supports the channel, it strengthens the energy of clarity, connection, and awakening that brought you here today. Section 7. The sacred, ordinary, and the emotional depth of awareness. When two awakened souls move through life together, their emotional world becomes something profoundly different from what most people know. They still feel the full spectrum of human emotion: joy, sadness, longing, frustration, tenderness, inspiration, yet they don't cling to any of it or turn those emotions into weapons. Nothing becomes ammunition, nothing becomes manipulation. Instead, emotions flow through them, the way weather moves across an open sky. The sky remains vast, unshaken, endlessly spacious, and so do they. Their awareness holds everything without collapsing into anything. This is where the sacredness of their connection reveals itself most clearly. For them, the divine doesn't only live in meditation, cosmic insight, or dramatic spiritual breakthroughs. It appears in the simplest moments, washing dishes together and laughing over the sound of running water, driving in silence with a comfortable sense of shared presence, sitting on a couch without needing to fill the quiet, or sharing a private smile about something only they understand. Their lives become a sanctuary where the ordinary transforms into a doorway of awakening. They understand that existence itself has a sense of humor, a cosmic joke that invites them not to take things too seriously. They laugh at their old patterns, their old selves, their past illusions. They don't surrender to each other with desperation or dependency. Instead, they surrender to life, to its rhythm, its surprises, its divine timing, its unfolding mystery. This shared surrender becomes the ground of their connection. Their relationship isn't built on the fragile hope that it must last forever or fulfill every fantasy the ego once demanded. It rests on presence, on clarity, on the ability to be fully here without gripping the future. And paradoxically, it is precisely this absence of clinging that deepens their bond. Because nothing is forced, everything becomes more real. Because nothing is possessed, everything becomes more sacred. Their love expands not from attachment but from awareness, a love that breathes, evolves, and reveals itself moment by moment. Section 8. A field of consciousness that awakens others. When two awakened souls come together, their presence does more than uplift each other. It transforms the very space around them. They generate a field of consciousness so steady, so coherent, and so grounded in truth that anyone who enters it feels subtly changed, even if they cannot explain why. People feel more at ease in their company. They breathe more deeply. They soften. Something inside them begins to settle, expand, or remember. This is not charisma. This is not performance. This is the natural radiance of two beings who embody peace without passivity, joy without frenzy, and love without grasping. Their presence is both calming and energizing. They do not suppress life, nor do they inflate it. They simply are fully, authentically, quietly, powerful, together yet completely free, connected yet unpossessive, supportive yet unattached. Their bond does not restrict anyone, least of all themselves. Instead, it becomes a living demonstration of what conscious union looks like when ego has loosened its grip and the heart stands unguarded. People who encounter them often feel as though they've stepped into a different atmosphere, one where honesty feels natural, where masks feel unnecessary, and where the deeper truth of their own being begins to stir. Their relationship becomes a mirror for others, a gentle reminder of what humanity is capable of when we stop trying to control love and instead allow love to reveal itself. This union is not about using another person to fill emptiness or satisfy a fantasy. It is not about possession, validation, or personal achievement. It is consciousness recognizing consciousness, awareness meeting awareness. Their love serves as a silent teaching, a transmission that awakens others simply by existing. In their presence, people begin to remember who they truly are beneath the noise and illusions of the world. And in this remembrance, the collective consciousness rises, one awakened encounter at a time. What unfolds when two awakened souls meet is not the familiar storyline of romantic fireworks, emotional chaos, or two incomplete hearts clutching at each other for survival. It is something far quieter, far more mysterious, and infinitely more truthful. Their meeting reveals that love, in its purest form, is not an exchange between two separate beings trying to trade affection for security. Instead, it is the profound recognition that separateness itself was always an illusion. Through their presence, the universe remembers itself, not as a fragmented collection of individuals, but as one continuous field of consciousness, temporarily expressing itself through two forms. Awakened souls do not collide, they resonate. They do not cling, they stand side by side with spaciousness. They do not demand, they meet each moment as it is, without grasping or resistance. In their union, something ancient and eternal shines through. It is not personal, though it moves through each person. It is not owned, though it flows between them effortlessly. It is the reminder that beneath all stories, beyond every identity and every fear, there is only one self meeting itself, again and again, through the eyes of another. And so as we come to the end of today's message, I invite you not just to understand this with your mind, but to feel it in your own life. Feel how every true connection you have ever experienced has been a glimpse of this oneness, a moment where the boundary between you and the other dissolved without your permission. Feel how every act of presence, honesty, and open-hearted awareness is actually a doorway back to the truth of who you are. If this message resonates, I challenge you to anchor it in your field by leaving a comment with this affirmation: love is oneness remembering itself. Type it clearly, claim it, and let it be your signal to the universe that you are ready for love in its highest form, not as attachment, but as awakening. If this video brought clarity, peace, or expansion to your heart, please take a moment to like this message, share it with someone who may need it, and continue your journey by watching the next video waiting for you below. Your presence here supports the channel, the collective awakening, and the flow of truth we are creating together. The path of awakened love is already within you. Now, all that remains is to walk it with awareness.